Daylight Wall stands forever. No other wall stands against it. Bring them down.
After some nice Twitter drama from the Templin Institute, let's look at his video about Space Marines and do a reaction video. You know what? I haven't done a reaction video in a while. And I think it would be funny to, get into the groove of things and let's see what other bad arguments can this person bring up. They brought a bunch of bad arguments on Twitter about female Space Marines, so my hopes are, let's be honest, the bar was low. Can he put it any lower? We'll see. Let's begin.
The process of transforming a new recruit into a warrior of the Adeptus Astartes is among the most challenging and complex operations that the Imperium of Mankind is still capable of performing. It remains a dangerous procedure, with many of its underlying principles barely understood, and even an otherwise healthy applicant might suffer from unpredictable mutations or other adverse effects on their physical, mental, or spiritual well-being. According to those familiar with the process, the first requirement of any Space Marine applicant is that they be biologically male. But this has understandably led to the question, why? Why are there no female Space Marines? The official line on the matter is that the process by which Space Marines are created relies inherently on the hormonal and biological makeup of the human male, meaning that only males can be subjected to the transformation.
And there you have it. But yet, this video doesn't stop here. I mean, this is all it needed to be. The video should have just stopped at this point and that's it. Yeah, I know it's a short video, but sometimes in life we need those 1-minute videos, 50-second videos, 20-second videos. There are some pretty good ones like that. Everything should have stopped here. But the female Space Marines argument will continue because they don't stop here. And that's the most sad part. They won't stop here. They'll go on. And as you can see, there's 11 more minutes of BS to endure. But, again, should have stopped here. It's official. Age of Darkness said it. It was confirmed. This debate should be over. But the Gene Stealers never stop trying to infiltrate and destroy, do they?
Okay, so there it is. Case closed, right?
Exactly.
There are no female Space Marines due to limitations inherent to the process of creating them.
Exactly. That's all it is. That's where you should stop. The fact that you're going on is, well, you digging your own grave even further.
Well, not really. The most important thing to remember when analyzing the grim darkness of the 42nd millennium, something which sadly many people seem to forget or ignore, is that every bit of information we have, every slice of text, every image, every piece of footage, everything, is coming from a source that can be either biased, misinformed, or outright lying.
Now this is just false, and it shows a very bad understanding of Warhammer lore in general. Really, you're gonna tell me, the Blood Angels having the, what's called? I forgot. The Red Thirst and the Black Rage is just misinformation. It's bias. That's not really how it works. There's a bunch of information that we have and we know it's clear cut. The Badabor, the Horus Heresy, the Beast Arises, even though it's kind of a meh series, but I still like it. It's still there. There are many books that go through everything, and I've said many times, you need to open a book sometimes to understand that most ideas don't really stand in front of a good logic or a mind well read. So this is just false. There's plenty of information that's verifiable and we know is true. The only things that are misinformed, bias, or how we say are outright lies is just small stuff. That's the most important part. Small stuff. Numbers in armies. Like, guess what? The Romans didn't defeat an army 500,000 strong when they were like 10,000 strong. Yeah, no, it didn't happen like that. They were more equal number. Stuff like that. But not these important parts, and not these parts that have been canonized in lore and in books. Again, books. Read them. They're good for you. They ain't gonna harm you. Nope.
This universe can never be condensed into a neat and tidy encyclopedia where every bit of data is attributed to some peer-reviewed journal or first-hand
What? Encyclopedia. There are many events that happen at the same time, and that's why we have, what do you call them? The Lexicanum and the Wiki. You can also have books again, which are pretty good. I recommend some of them. You like open any book. That's the biggest recommendation I have. But we have a way to know what's true and what's not, and that's information that can be verified through multiple books. It doesn't have to be peer reviewed. What in the name of God is that? You expect somebody to peer review the Blood Angel's Red Thirst, or the Wolfen Curse for the Space Wolves, or the secrecy of the Dark Angels? Have we really gotten to that point? I mean, as I said in the beginning, the bar was low, but holy hell. And I've just begun. It's like 5 minutes, 6 minutes. Oh well.
account. The history of the Imperium and the galaxy it inhabits is instead a blend of legend, myth, contradictions, deception, and forgery.
No. We have clear knowledge of what happens. We have knowledge of the Great Crusade. We have some knowledge of the Great Crusade. A lot of knowledge about the Horus Heresy, and a bunch of myths and legends start from there. That, guess what, are actually true. We also know about the war in the heaven. Both of them. The fight against the Necrons and the one with the Eldars are destroying each other. We know that the Eldars, it has been confirmed through multiple sources. Again, open a book. It has been confirmed through multiple sources that the Eldars created Slaanesh. So that's false. Let's see how more false we can get. How more fake.
In the grim darkness of the far future, objective truth does not exist. Anyone who tells you otherwise is probably looking to claim your soul.
There is an objective truth to things. It is an objective it's an objective truth that chaos corrupts. Another objective truth, don't trust the Eldars. You never know when they're friend and when they turn into foe. Another objective truth, the Tau are kind of simple-minded and not really that bright to the larger plays of the galaxy. The Tyranids like to consume things. That's a simple truth. That's an objective truth. The Orcs are just ravaging beasts who like to fight stuff. Another objective truth. Should I go through more? Or should I stop here? Because I can go through more objective truths like this, and, well, this video won't end too soon.
So if you read the aforementioned quote and decided to accept it at face value, good for you. The Imperium is always in need of easily persuaded, uncritical souls to work as leech harvesters and mind thralls.
Wow. I can't... With the passive aggressiveness in that thing, the passive aggressiveness, it's trying to fight back the L's it took on Twitter, but it ain't working. It ain't working, boss. You ain't getting that far with this. Oh, I'm sorry that the material that the Games Workshop published as canon is somehow propagandistic to you. Again, open a book, read a book. It will help you a lot in life in general. Not only for this YouTube thing.
But for me, the more interesting way to interpret this universe is to never fully trust anything you've been told.
That's kind of dumb. That's big dumb. I don't think I have words for that. To not trust anything you've been told. Yeah, everything's a lie. Like, not even Inquisitors think like that. And Inquisitors need to be skeptical and, very... filled with passion for their job. Trust anything you've ever been told? Yeah, well, I guess somebody's gonna have to date the Emperor's children to learn better have a chastity belt.
So when available sources claim that the process of creating Space Marines is only successful in men, and in almost every instance, artwork and footage depicts the Astartes universally as men, I am inclined to believe that yeah, female Space Marines don't seem to exist. But do I take this as unshakable evidence? No.
Yeah, no, this is just weird. Like, you recognize they don't exist, but you don't take it like, oh, they really don't exist. No, something's behind it. Let's find out what's behind it. I want to see where this leads. It's leading to a place that's awful. Did I put it on loop? Nah.
Genetic engineering is one of the few areas of scientific advancement that survived the Age of Strife more or less intact.
Barely. Yeah.
It is very likely the only field of study in which the Imperium can even approach the marvels and miracles of the Golden Age of humanity.
Not really. That's not really. It ain't genetics that do it. They have the process to make more Space Marines, but that's about it. You could probably talk about technology, but even that's a bunch of it is lost. Genetics isn't their most advanced stuff. Maybe technology again, thanks to Mars and finding of the STCs and stuff, and even Guilliman coming back with some new models that Carl prepared. But it ain't genetics, because if it was genetics, I think we would have more Space Marines than we currently do.
This is precisely why the Emperor used it as the basis of the Thunder Warriors, Custodes, and eventually the Space Marine.
What? Yeah, he knew how to do it, and it's kind of implied that some points that Chaos had a hand in it, especially with the Primarchs had a hand in it. But again, it wasn't their most advanced stuff. The Emperor was just brilliant as he was. This doesn't really go anywhere, does it? I'm just wasting my time, right?
The idea that the Imperium's biotechnical divisions were able to create genetically modified warriors who can spit acid and acquire a subject's memories by eating its flesh were somehow thwarted by comparatively minor differences in human hormones, well, I don't buy it.
I mean, I don't know if I should say this because I'm posting this on YouTube, but men and women are different, yeah? Right? So, and especially in the process like that's so complicated like this one, that even includes, what was it again? 20-something organs? I know the Primaris got more at some point. No, and the Emperor mostly worked alone on those designs, so again, no. The fact that you don't buy the fact the lack of female Space Marines being a thing because the hormones and stuff is fake. I don't know how to tell you, but you can see the sky green and the sea violet. It ain't gonna change reality.
Completely. I am also aware that Imperial organizations work tirelessly to suppress information, and that the decision of what information necessitates suppression often comes down to the archaic and nonsensical opinions of zealots and the insane.
So that's just wrong. That really again proves you've never really opened a book about this thing. Probably never read one either. In general, not only about 40k. Yes, the Imperium does have suppression of information. The same way where at the end of The Beast Arises, they showed another orc because, to not scare the population of how great the beast was. But it makes sense. You need the context of the world to get that information. You need the context of the world to understand stuff. And not everything is suppressed information. The Blood Angels and their successor chapters hid the Red Thirst and Black Rage, because they didn't want others to know about it. Considering that the Space Wolves can turn into werewolves, at this point, is it really that much of a mystery? But again, nah. Not fully, not entirely in this point. Not at all. Oh yeah, I also use an ad blocker, so have fun.
And furthermore, it is often very difficult to ascertain what is being deliberately suppressed and what the Imperium has just gotten wrong.
There's an Inquisitor somewhere that has some information that's correct and nobody else has. No big deal.
The earliest encounters with the Necrons saw them labeled as Chaos Androids, until...
Nope, that's wrong. Right now you're quoting old lore, and that's not valid. I think the most... there were Chaos Warrior, Chaos Androids in the beginning, but, things changed, the lore stabilized, and everything went the good way that it's going right now. They weren't Chaos Androids in the proper lore and context that we have now.
Until recently, it was deemed as incontrovertible that the Squats had been rendered extinct by the Tyranids.
Again, the squads that you're referring to, well, guess what happened with them? Some of them survived, and, well, that's the in-canon explanation. The out-of-canon explanation was that they wanted to do something with the squads at some point in the future, because, you know what, dwarves in space didn't really fit them that properly at the time. So again, no, this one's also wrong. Good job, you had two examples, both wrong. You could have used anything else, but apparently you didn't.
Even the Imperium's own history is often misunderstood. There were times when the prevailing narrative was that Horus was not the Emperor's favored Primarch, but rather an especially competent general.
Again, using old lore that no longer is valid, that hasn't been valid for years at this point. How old is Game Workshop right now? 40? Close to that range? Again, this is from the very beginning. This is stuff that no longer counts. Nothing from Rogue Trader ever counts anymore. They have nods to them, like the squad, like Ilya Nastasi coming back in the Dark Imperium books, but this doesn't count. You made 3 examples. Both of them from a period where the established lore wasn't set as it is today, and all of them stupid. Well, the other 2 even more than this one, but still. Why don't people never use proper examples of retcons and stuff like this? They always harken back to Rogue Trader or 2nd edition. I really want to know why. Is it maybe because it's easier to point at that than it is to read a book? I swear, this whole video could just be me telling, or me saying over and over again, read a book.
And his heresy lasted only 7 days and 7 nights. With all this in mind, my personal interpretation is that female...
Funny how those are the Sunstroke chapters from that, what's called, fan magazine, Games Design Workshop. By the way, these are not real female Astartes. Don't worry about that. No female Space Marines here.
Astartes almost certainly existed during the time of the Great Crusade.
They didn't. You think they existed during the time of the Great Crusade? How? I mean, you know what? Let's see.
I think the Emperor, in this progressive era, had fully mastered the creation of the Astartes, regardless of gender. Perhaps even some famous figures from this era were in fact female. But at some point...
No. Let's present some arguments. First, let's tackle the big donkey in the room, which is the missing Primarchs, which many people go, oh, the missing Primarchs could be female. Except we know that Horus calls them brothers. And remember, I think the Primarchs didn't have their memory wiped about the missing Primarchs and their legions. Only the Space Marines had that. Yeah, only the Space Marines. Who would have thought, right? But that aside, that covers one point. What was the other point? Oh yeah, regarding this one with the missing legions, we know one missing legion was absorbed by the Ultramarines, which kind of means that if there were female Astartes, people would have noticed. Especially when you have characters like, I don't know, Veritus from the Beast Arises that lived for 1,000-something years. Yeah, spoiler alert, I guess. When you have many other characters that survived this whole Horus Heresy stuff. When you have, guess what? Listen to me closely. When you have the Horus Heresy books, yes, books, I know, hard concept. It's hard to read a book, but you'll get there at some point. Those prove exactly that there were not any female Space Marines, the missing Primarchs were also not, guess what, female.
Point during the history of the Imperium, possibly because of complications with implanting gene seed, but more likely because of some ignorant proclamation by the Ecclesiarchy or another imperial institution.
The Ecclesiarchy doesn't care about men or women. The existence of the Sororitas after the Frateries were disbanded proves it. And also the fact that they still keep men as creatures, but have female warriors. Interesting dynamics, sort of like in World of Warcraft with the Night Elves.
the idea of recruiting female space marines fell out of favor. Today, if any still remain within the chapters,
There are none. There never were any, and there aren't. And there'll never be. I'm willing to say that.
they are a rarity. Furthermore, I am almost convinced that with the slightest bit of effort, the Space Marine chapters could again accept female recruits. But the
They can.
Imperium has become so entrenched in religious dogma and ignorance that it's become unable to question and possibly disprove what it considers to be the absolute.
You see, another example why you should open a book. I know I'm repeating myself, but I have to be honest here. Opening a book kind of disproves, well, the 4 minutes we've wasted on this, excluding the one where he says something right, and that's the fact that women can't become space marines. That's it. It's only 1 minute, and we wasted four for what? Nothing. Just things that could be disproven by books. The Space Wolves almost went to, well, almost went, whatever. The Space Wolves were in conflict with the Inquisition. Many chapters are in conflict with the Inquisition. Here's a funny thing. If you would have just read the book in your life, you would know that Space Marines aren't into the whole creed of the Emperor being a god. Yeah? Most of them still believe in the imperial truth that the Emperor taught while he was alive. It's a few chapters, quite frankly enough, some of Dorn's spawn more than others, that believe he was a god. Get it? Space Marines aren't affected by religious dogma and general, and there's only a handful of chapters that really are. So you can't use that as an excuse, and it doesn't work like this.
Absolute truth. The Imperium senselessly wasting 50% of its own available manpower, if you'll pardon the term, because of some ancient misunderstanding, is the kind of tragedy this regime is built on.
No, the whole regime of the Imperium is built on the tragedy of having to survive in a world where everything wants you dead. That's the tragedy of it.
Now, admittedly, this is just my personal headcanon, or fan fiction if you prefer, and it's based on even less evidence than the conclusion that there are no female space marines whatsoever.
It's based on no evidence. Look, if you have your own headcanon, that's whatever. Nobody, I think, cares that much about headcanons. If you want to believe, as I said, that the sky is green and the sea is violet, go right ahead. I don't think anybody's going to try and stop you. But you've made that there's been quite a fuss. There's been some interesting comments made by the Templin Institute regarding this subject. And now he seems to be, well, trying to do some damage control with this video.
I'm sure you can poke holes in my opinion just as easily as I did in the official stance of the Imperium.
Except you didn't poke any holes, you just proved you don't know anything about the lore. You didn't poke anything, you didn't disprove anything. You just said something that was wrong, that proved you haven't read a book in your life, and that's it.
I don't even necessarily think that my stance is the most realistic, it's just what I happen to think is most interesting.
Yeah, and I also think there's the Chaos Space Marines that turn loyalists. Not the loyalists, Alpha Legion, but they turned their face to the Emperor and they got rid of all their corruption and are now fighting with the Imperium. That's really not gonna happen, right? And I'm not using that as a way to do some damage control. Am I?
That's what I enjoy about this universe. It invites differences of interpretation. But again,
Not really. There are things that are clear cut. What interpretation? If we read the same book, it's gonna have the same ending and the same things in it. If it's the same book. If I somehow read Soul Drinker and you read Dawn of Fire or Dawn of War, that's gonna be different. Because they're different books. There's no way you can say, oh, there's more interpretations to this. Because there are none. Because when you draw the line at it, events happen. Yarick beats whatever the big orc guy whose name I can't pronounce. Marak 2 or whatever. it ain't based on interpretation. There's no different way of viewing stuff. There's wrong way of viewing stuff, like thinking that chaos isn't evil and believing what you learned in the Emperor's text-to-speech videos, that, oh, chaos just is. No, it isn't. It's evil. Made a video on those. But no, the rest of it isn't. 40K is kind of clear-cut in most of its things and what it wants to say.
I can't put any more stock into this own interpretation of mine than I would into anyone else's. The universe just doesn't work that way.
Yes, it does. Technically.
Is it possible there never were any female space marines? Yes. Is it possible there are female space marines somewhere else?
No, the answer is no. There have never been female space marines. Your interpretation of, there are somewhere, no, it doesn't hold a candle. Because it's not true, we have things that disprove it. Books upon books upon books upon books upon books upon books. Yes, I know I'm annoying, but I have to reiterate this point. Because, my god. And it has that stupid female protagonist look at the nose ring and the shaved cut. It's hurting my eyes.
Out there in the galaxy? Yes.
No.
Is it possible there could be an entire chapter consisting only of female space
No, that's stupid.
marines? Absolutely. And is it possible that this all-female chapter is in fact the Ultramarines or the Black Templars or the Space Wolves? There's a lot of evidence to the contrary, and while I can be 99% certain that this isn't true and that Marnius Calgar is indeed a man, the very nature of this universe means it's impossible to say with absolute certainty.
No, it's not. You can say with certainty that they are still men, if you can call them that, more like transhumans. So a little bit over that subject, but they are still male. They're not female. That 1% that you're claiming means nothing because it's wrong. Again, just smack yourself with a book and start reading it. It's not that hard. 6 more minutes. We're just halfway there and I already spent half an hour on this.
Certainty. Even in our own era, there have been times when historical figures commonly believed to have been men were later discovered to have been women, and vice versa. And doesn't this kind of revelation seem like it would fit just perfectly into the age of the Imperium?
I mean, it could if you were talking about guardsmen at some point. Like you have this heroic guardsman that killed an orc very bravely with his bayonet, and everybody thinks it's a man, but it's a woman. I mean, that's a gag if you want to write one in a book, but you can't really pull this once you have material upon material of information about what actually happened.
Sure, a figure like Marnius Calgar is a bit of a stretch. If evidence came out that he was in fact a woman, I probably wouldn't believe that and fall back on my own interpretation, but I mention this only to illustrate the idea that history is not immune to drastic change in light of new evidence. And the history of the Imperium even more so. Maybe in our current era, being 99% certain about something is enough to arrive at a justifiable conclusion, but the 42nd millennium is a time in which we need to forget the promise of progress and understanding, and the power of science and technology.
I mean, not really. The power of science and technology still helps the Imperium. But what you call 99%, it's 100%. Again, it's a dance. It's a weird dance in circles where this person tries to justify his own headcanon at this point to prove that it's somehow correct. That in a universe out there, this does happen. Yeah, well, in the universe out there, I'm a millionaire, but nobody gets what they want.
Within the Imperium, that 99% might as well be zero. And this extends to every aspect of the far future. Did Horus kill Sanguinius
Yes.
before his final confrontation with the Emperor? Maybe. I'd even go so far as to say probably. But if someone told me that during the siege of Terra,
And he's now hearkening to that theory that Sanguinius went mad, and he fought the Emperor after he killed Horus and stuff. Yeah, no, Horus killed Sanguinius. There's the replica at, I think, Warhammer World. We're getting new books for the Siege of Terra where we're gonna see this happen, and it's already set in stone. Okay, that happened. We know that did happen. Remember that curse that the Blood Angels had? Yeah, the Black Rage. Yeah, that doesn't happen without a reason. Like look here.
Sanguinius fell to the Black Rage.
He couldn't fall to the Black Rage. The Black Rage didn't exist. You probably want to mean that, well, he fell to the Red Thirst. Understandably so, but it was kind of late for him to fall right there. If the theory says the Red Thirst, it gets a little bit more believable, but the Black Rage is something that appeared after his death, after he was already, gone, and, well, the Emperor avenged him against Horus. Sanguinius can fall to the Black Rage because the Black Rage didn't exist yet. You see? Reading, it helps.
Killed Horus and then tried to kill the Emperor, and this was suppressed by the High Lords of Terra to preserve the honor of one of mankind's greatest heroes. There is nothing I can do to definitively prove that person wrong.
Yeah, you can. We're getting books. Oh, wait, I forgot you don't read. There's this weird thing in Romanian mythology where, and no, I don't think it's only Romanian mythology. I think it's in general in some Christian nations where the devil is scared of holy water or crosses. I think this is how books are for these kind of tourists into the hobby. They're like these things that if they touch them, they burn. It's sort of like the vampires in a way. They don't sparkle, they just start burning. Obvious, you can always count on it to destroy something up. Anyway, I'm not sure if I got this part on, so I'm just gonna mention it here again. 40k, like every other universe, has its own rules, like Star Wars, like Warcraft. It respects those rules. If the rules of the universe say only male can be Space Marines, then guess what? Only male can be Space Marines. It's that easy.
With the essential nature of the universe. Because the essential nature is fluid, always changing as new information is discovered.
Yeah, it's called the passage of time. Happens in the real world too.
And old information repressed.
The only constant is tone and atmosphere. The details are ultimately secondary to that.
Yeah, that was a nice. I think that was Rogue Trader, or yeah, it was. I think it was Rogue Trader. Funny to see Space Marines the same height as Hive Gangers. Oh boy, that was funny.
And if you disagree with me, if your interpretation of the grim darkness of the far future is different from mine, well, this will be one of the few times I admit this, but your interpretation is every bit as valid as mine.
Wrong. And you're wrong with this not because the interpretation of people is not valid. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that the stuff you're spewing isn't correct. There's nothing to it. Again, as headcanon, believe what you want, but to act like your headcanon can be as viable as, or as, I think viable works, as correct as the things that we already have in books, that we already have in some codexes, that we have in a lot of stuff, and a lot of history for that stuff, mind you, because the Horus Heresy has been running for a while, is wrong. It's not about interpretations, it's about the rules of the universe and how... I hate OBS. Anyway, nope. The worlds have their own, universes have their own set of rules. Interpretations don't really matter when we have things that we know are truth and factual.
I admit this, but your interpretation is every bit as valid as mine.
Nope.
If you can look honestly.
Nope. Because the truth is that people value the world for its lore and for what we already have written. It's something stable. Your interpretation is nothing but headcanon that you're dancing around trying to prove it can exist when it doesn't, and more than likely it never will.
At the 42nd millennium and come to the conclusion that female Space Marines just don't belong there. Not out of any place of misogyny, but a genuine belief.
They don't belong because they've never belonged. There's one constant the game's workshop has always held, and that is the Space Marines are male only. And that happens since Rogue Trader. Since the game started. Well, game. You understand. They have been constant with that for years upon years.
that it just doesn't make sense given what we know, I respect your position. And if tomorrow, some higher authority decreed that there are in fact female Space Marines, 100% full stop, I would, without reservation, defend your right to ignore that decree, and to continue to interpret this universe in whatever way makes it the most interesting to you.
This whole thing is what you see many tourists be like, oh, Games Workshop will bring Space Marines at some point. Or something like that. Oh, they will bring female Space Marines at some point. No, they won't. It destroys their own world, and it will probably destroy their own money if they do that. But no, this whole trying to go into the future thing to act like a farseer isn't really gonna help your point, your strawmans, or your bad arguments.
But I would ask that you extend this same mindset to me and everyone else, whether I say that female Space Marines exist, or Sanguinius killed Horus, or that the entire universe of the 42nd millennium is actually within a bottle kept by a wizard in Reichland. What I truly love about the grim darkness of the 42nd millennium is that its very nature precludes the possibility of someone, anyone, coming in and telling you what is right, what is wrong, and that there's only one way to experience it.
Wrong. There is. We know what is right and we know what is wrong. Falling to corruption is wrong. Guess what else is wrong? Becoming a traitor or a heretic is also wrong. There are rules for this universe, and rules that guide the universe and tell the story. There is right and wrong. As much as you might not believe in those concepts, moralists or fake moralists, fake gray moralists, more like it.
And I'll let you in on a little secret. During one of our investigations into the Imperium of Man, I included a detail that has since become the single most referenced bit of lore on this channel. We receive comments about how cool it is almost daily. The latest one, at time of recording, was left about 80 minutes ago. But that little bit of lore, according to the latest information available, either no longer exists or never did. But I thought it was cool and I included it anyways. Whether or not it's true really isn't important. It's true to me, and that's enough. And given
It's true to me, and that's enough. Fortunately, that's not how life works, and it's not how world building works, it being true to you. So scratch that with world building, because if you're a writer, kind of works like that. But when you're basically entering a fandom, or I hate that word, when you're into something that has already established rules and lore, being cool to you doesn't really matter, as long as it's not true.
Given how popular it's become on this channel, I kind of think people agree with me, even if they don't know it. And while I certainly understand and even appreciate having an ironclad history, a firm and uncompromising canon or continuity if you will, there are also times when it's refreshing to just not deal with that.
Yeah, you can paint your own Space Marines, you can paint your own sisters. Every faction is a blank canvas where you can paint it whatever color you want and give it whatever story you want. Problem is that that's basically your fan fiction. That's not the truth of the universe, and that's not really how it works.
Wouldn't it have been nice to have the option to say that Rey is not Palpatine's granddaughter, or that the war against the Night King was way cooler than whatever this is, and have those interpretations be totally
That makes no sense.
valid? Now I am no fool, and I have no doubt that I will have failed to convince most or even any of you, but let's make a deal.
Yeah, because you don't have proper arguments. You just have your straw mans and your bad ideas and trying to act like there's a possibility out there for something that you wish to happen. That, oh, it's already there. There are female Space Marines out there. Now, again, trying to act like somehow War 40k doesn't have lore is bad. Read a book. Go ahead, find a book, open it, and start reading it. It doesn't even have to be 40k at this point. Just read something for children. Barney the Dinosaur, something along those lines.
Deal. If you decide to argue with me in the comments, include the following phrase somewhere in your argument. You will die as your weakling father died. You'll get the satisfaction of tearing me down with a badass line, and I, and everyone else at the very least, will know that you watched this entire video, were open to what I had to say, and that your argument is being made in good faith. Just keep the rest of it civil. My feelings can only be hurt so much. But if you think the idea
That's a weird way. I mean, that's an interesting way. What if somebody watches the whole video and doesn't want to say your line, huh? What do you do then? Gonna cry about it? Probably say he didn't watch the video, despite him debunking points further in the video. Sounds kind of weak, to be honest. That's why I don't really like Warcraft YouTubers. Well, I do like some. That's a lie.
idea of female space marines just being a possibility, according to one interpretation, is some kind of betrayal. If this discussion has caused you to decide that the woke moralists over at the Temple Institute have finally gone too far, if even now you are furiously hitting the unsubscribe button, well, the tree of any YouTube channel must from time to time be nourished by the blood of misogynists, and as the saying goes,
Again with the dumb arguments about, oh, if you don't want female spacemen, you're a misogynist. They're dumb because people like this guy really have this hatred for women. And I think it's a hatred for women because, you see, they only want women in the male-only faction. And they disregard all the other female factions. The Sisters of Battle, the Sisters of Silence, the Eldar Aspect Warriors. There are even Taus you can make. You can have a whole battalion, I guess, of female Taus if you want. You see, they disregard that point and only to use the whole misogynistic people at it. No. It's a cop-out. You're trying to act like somehow you've got a higher standpoint or moral high ground, when in truth you have none. You haven't read a book in your life and you have no morals. Good job. I wish I could be that spineless. Not really. That's the joke.
you will not be missed.
Oh, he used the phrase that Games Workshop used. You will not be missed. You will not be missed. Yeah, how was that working for Games Workshop, huh? When there was an active email campaign and they kind of took that back, huh? You will not be missed. I wouldn't be so sure. No, that's coming from Games Workshop side. But from your side, social, let's look a little bit, since we're still here and OBS isn't dying. Let's go to Social Blade. And let's just do something interesting. The Templin Institute. It has like nothing to do with the video, and it's supposed to be a reaction, but let's see how the You Will Not Be Missed is going. Oh, 4K. Oh, so that? I mean, it's a big channel, technically, so. He will fill them. There's also a funny part somewhere in the description where somebody talks about, where is it? There's a part where they talked about a loyalist gene stealer, and he seemed pretty opposed to that idea because, oh, canon matters in that point, but when it comes to the Space Marines, it doesn't. I don't have to make the arguments of woke people, of SJWs and stuff, for it to be clear and obvious that these people are gene stealers themselves. They come, they try to infiltrate, to subvert, then to ruin. Because that's where it all leads. From Star Trek, to Star Wars, to Doctor Who, unfortunately to Lord of the Rings, it always leads to that point. Always. Anyway, this is it for today, and I'll see you in the next one.